Welcome to another episode of The Golden Hour. I'm Sharif Yunus, here with Dr. Kevin Majers. Kevin, good to be here with you.
Sharif, great to be here.
And I think we have a great episode today. We actually get a lot of questions kind of on this topic, either directly or indirectly, on the idea of creativity and how you do for example, a golden hour. How do you plan out your steps? How do you plan out the work when it's something that you've never done before, or it's genuinely new and creative work, like researching a new topic, or brainstorming or tasks like that. So we wanted to discuss this, and Kevin, you have a kind of framework for thinking about this. So maybe you call it the cloud.
Yeah, the Cloud of Unknowing, you could say it. And there's actually a great YouTube video by Yuri Alan on this topic, and he does scientific research, and he tells there about his experience when you're working on a new project, and you get to this point where you feel like you're not making progress because you just don't know anything. It's like you've kind of reached the edge, actually, of what you know, or maybe what the field knows. And so he called that the cloud. And he says that when you get there, you can have all these negative emotions because you feel uncertain and you're doubting yourself. But that actually is the best place to be, because that's where real creative work and discovery takes place. So I love that idea that there's this sense you don't have your confidence, maybe. You don't know exactly how you're going to proceed through. But you do have an end in mind, and you're trying to work to get there, and you're feeling your way through. That reminds me of something that the great Spanish poet and mystic, St. John of the Cross, he talks about this in one of his books, where he says that basically if you're a traveler trying to get to a land where you've never been, you have to follow paths that you've never taken. And he even says that if people learning new details about their art or trade must work in darkness and not with what they already know, and that they refuse to lay aside their former knowledge, they'll never make any further progress. So there's this idea here of you have to be willing to lay aside what you know, or your models of your expectations of how things should be, and have more of an open mind to discovery and to taking new paths. But in order to take new paths in the right direction, you have to have clearly the goal that you're aiming for. What's the real good that you're seeking in this? And I think that does come up a lot when you think of how people are trying to work, especially any work where it's creative or there's an impasse or a new unexpected difficulty, and then what do? That's actually when they really need to embrace the cloud.
Just for reference, the video you mentioned is called "Why Truly Innovative Science Demands a Leap into the Unknown," it's a TED Talk, which you can find on YouTube. So just a quick question. So and I think Yuri Alan talks about this too, is what is the kind of the normal response that people have to facing this cloud? He kind of hints that people shy away from it.
Yeah, they feel pretty miserable because you just feel like you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But that is where real growth takes place. When you're at the edge of what you can already do, and now you're having to build a new way of doing things.
So that's kind of the reframe, is you see this cloud as a bad thing. I don't know exactly what I'm doing, or I don't know where I'm going. But then you learn to see it as, actually, this is precisely where the innovation, the growth, the improvement takes place.
Exactly. Now, he talks about this example that when people are really focused on a particular outcome, they think that progress is just a straight line to that outcome. But in fact, that's not how it happens, even though maybe it seems like that afterwards. I think you have to hold the outcome lightly and really look for what is the real progress you're trying to make here. And so, for instance, when you're doing any kind of research, there is a process of shedding the assumptions that you've made. So you're kind of discovering assumptions. Maybe I need to let go of that. Maybe we don't really know that piece. Or you might realize that somehow you've been looking for a particular answer, And maybe the real answer is actually already there, but you kept rejecting it. So there's all these different ways it can show up. That you're you need to widen the context. You have to have the kind of a beginner's mind or an experimental mindset, so that you're looking really for better, deeper ways here of making progress.
Can you help me kind of understand this point of how do you, so on the one sense, you do want to stay committed to a particular end. I mean, so if you're doing scientific research, you have a particular question that you're asking, but at the same time, because you're kind of in the cloud, in this area of uncertainty, of unknowing, that you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You don't know exactly what the result is going to be or what the path forward is going to be. So how do you kind of keep focused on the end without knowing exactly what the end is going to be?
Well, you can know the end that you're seeking, and then keep looking for how to get there. So it might be you're looking for a way of synthesizing, these concepts, or you're looking, and so you keep looking for the synthesis, and you know that there's a way they can fit together, but you haven't done it yet. Or it's just, for instance, like in a conversation. So you think you're talking to someone. What's the good you're seeking? So if the good you're seeking is really getting to know them more deeply, then you keep on finding ways to get there. And so you might ask a question that goes nowhere, but then you have to like keep the end in mind and then come up with a better question. So when you're focusing on these things, like you're focusing on what's the real goal here, what's the real good, the positive good that I'm seeking, you can become creative, and flexible in trying to get there. Versus, and that actually, so that leads you to like continually come up with new strategies. If there's any kind of progress you want to make, even if it's it could be overcoming anxiety or your habitual frustration in some situation. Keep the positive goal in mind. What is it you want to get to be shaping, and then keep being creative about new strategies, new initiatives for getting there. It's like I was mentioning an example once of tennis, that people get hyper focused on not hitting the net when they first start, and they think that progress is they're gonna in some linear fashion get better and better at not hitting the net until finally they don't hit it at all. But if they have that idea, it doesn't really help them to improve. It's like a model that they've actually imposed, but it's not real. What's real is how you actually hit the ball, the form you have. And it might be that as you're working on form, initially you end up hitting the net much more frequently, but then the real progress starts to kick in as you get this enduring growth from having practiced the right form. And then with that new skill that's been forged, you can actually, end up with much better outcomes. In general, focusing on the positive goals of a process will eventually give you better outcomes. It's just like if you get in conversations, if you get better at asking interesting questions, open-ended questions, there are books on how to ask questions, then you end up making much more progress and really getting to know the people you're talking to. And same like in research, asking the right questions. Maybe that's what so much of the cloud comes down to, is really asking the right questions with the right end in mind.
So to come back to your example of tennis, it seems like that when you commit to the process of improving your form rather than just trying to hit it above the net, that in the beginning you might be even worse off, or you might hit it into the net more frequently. So it seems like there's always going to be this doubt kind of creeping in that you're just not on the right path. And this could happen also in a research project. You just feel like, you just have this doubt that the process that I'm following right now is not going to reach the right conclusion. But it does seem like there is actually a possibility there that, maybe what we're taking to be the cloud actually is a dead end. How do you, is that a possibility, or are you saying that there are no dead ends? How would you maybe distinguish the two?
Yeah, if the good that you are seeking, which is, say, some real growth in knowledge, in skills, in virtues or character strengths, in bonds, those are the things of real growth. The real kind of like mastery, anything that there's a real serious growth, as long as you know that actually is possible. And I believe that I'm not saying anyone can acquire any skill, but certainly anyone can acquire any virtue, and you can always deepen bonds. So when you're looking at those kind of positive, goods that you're seeking, it is always possible to find strategies at improving. Not strategies for being perfect right away, but strategies for moving in the right direction, so you're approximating it. So I think there's a sense in which you have to jump into the cloud with both feet. Commit yourself entirely to the process here of discovering the right new strategies to use. So you just kind of commit to that creative process, and then you keep strategizing, and then as you start getting traction, you make sure, okay, is this the right direction? As long as it gets the right direction, you let the momentum build and build, and that's how you then really make solid, new progress. So in getting somewhere you hadn't actually been before. But you have to jump into it with both feet. It's like if you're trying to do the new tennis move. You have to really put all your attention into just the form. So the shape of the forehand, or keeping your eye on the ball, or not moving your head when you're hitting the ball. And you just put everything into that until then you get that down. And then it gets incorporated and you get better and better. But you can't half be trying to not hit the net so much and then also doing this other thing.
Yeah, you have to have the real commitment to the strategy that you're trying.
Exactly. I think that's what confidence is. In some ways, it's your ability to jump into this cloud and then keep strategizing until you get traction. So if you're like a super competent surgeon and there's a totally new thing that comes up, well, then you jump into it and you keep then strategizing until you come up with the right solution. And gradually then, after doing that, case after case, you get this confidence that you know what kinds of things you can handle with the current skills you have, and you know how to work at creating new skills. So it's that confidence requires that you have this habit of being creative and flexible when you reach an impasse or a difficulty or some edge of what you know.
So it seems like as you're developing skills, for example, I think of this as a programmer, is that you're working with a new technology or you're trying to make something new, and it's very difficult. You have no idea how to proceed, but then gradually you start playing around with it, you start getting to know it a little bit better, and then you develop a kind of facility with it, and then over time you refine that and you gain mastery. But then you always need to but once you hit that point, then at that point your growth is kind of starting to slow in that area. So you need to be looking for a new cloud to continue growing. So actually, over the course of your career and growing, you need many of these clouds to really be developing and growing.
I think that's exactly right. That the cloud, you have to seek the cloud continually. You seek the edge of your abilities, the edge of what you know, what you're super comfortable with. People talk about get outside your comfort zone. That's the idea. You seek the discomfort of the cloud, but you always have some positive goal in mind. It's not haphazard. And so you're looking for a particular, what's the next right question, what's the next right skill that I need to be aiming for here.
Then how should people be approaching golden hours along this trajectory? Because if I think about it, as I'm starting to gain facility with a new technology or new techniques and to develop that into mastery, it's a little bit easier for me to come up with what are the best steps to follow, and maybe to then be thinking about how do I tweak these steps. Whereas at the beginning, if I'm just very much in the cloud, I think that's a time where I have a lot of difficulty coming up with steps. But the way we emphasize it with the golden hour, the importance of having steps. So is it that you don't necessarily need to have steps if you're facing the cloud or in the cloud? Or are the steps going to have a kind of different nature to them? So how do you help people with that?
I think that one thing is the practice of setting up an hour of work where you know that you're going to be going to the cloud. And that may be different than setting up an hour of work when you're doing something that you know very well. Still, at the beginning, you're going to be asking yourself some question about reframing. And that means widening the context. What is really the highest goal I could be setting here for my own growth and for my ability to serve others? So if you're reframing, trying to widen the context a bit so that how can I really grow here? That means not just trying to get an outcome, right? But trying to really see about some actual progress that you yourself are making in this task. So that already disposes you well towards the cloud. That you're going to be looking for those edges of what you're comfortable with to see how to get beyond. I think mindfulness also very much mindfulness is the simple practice of deliberate attention. You could say it's just staying very deliberate when the simple step is attending to the breath or something like that. Okay, so simple deliberation, practicing it before an hour of work, that is exactly the mindset you need when you're in the cloud. Not going down rabbit holes, just looking to get things done, but holding your attention, having this higher level of awareness, of, okay, am I making progress in the right direction? Where am I going right now? But in the cloud, you can't be reactive. You can't just be kind of automatically trying to go through with whatever seems right in the second. But you need this higher level, hovering a bit, over the task and seeing, okay, is this really the right direction, so that you can keep experimenting until you get traction. So I think the same frame of mind is exactly what happens in mindfulness.
Can I ask you a quick question about mindfulness?
Yeah.
One thing that we talk about with mindfulness in work is a lot about holding your attention in the present moment, whereas mindfulness with anxiety is about opening and feeling the negative emotions that you might be experiencing. Is there some room for that type of mindfulness in the cloud? Because it seems to me like in the cloud, it's very frustrating. And that frustration, you don't want to feel it. And that means you want to give up on the task and, do something easier or stop doing it or go watch TV instead. So is there an element of mindfulness here where, like, kind of to be in the cloud, to be willing to be in the cloud, to be willing to feel the discomfort and the frustration that comes with that?
I think that even when it comes to mindfulness of anxiety, that the primary good is that your attention is completely in the present moment. And secondarily, and you actually use, I would say, the awareness of anxiety to hold your attention purely in the present moment. So that you're not engaging in any worrying and magnifying of the problem, getting kind of detached from reality, but you stay completely in reality. And then you can take real next steps, which allows you then to reshape it. I think so the goal here is with mindfulness, get your attention out of your own mind, out of your expectations, out of your arbitrary rules for how this is supposed to be working. So you just get it, so you leave your own mind behind and are just engaging reality. That is actually the ideal situation to be in for making real progress in the cloud. Because in the cloud, you constantly are coming up with new strategies and assessing the traction you're getting, but you need contact with what's real to do that. So mindfulness helps you to keep things real.
Got it. And then, sorry, did I cut you off? Were you about to
the third step,
talk about challenge?
I would say. Yeah, exactly. So, in the golden hour, the ordinary way of addressing challenge is you define the steps for doing it. I don't think people should be in any way caught up with sequential steps if the work they're doing doesn't allow for it. But you might essentially be thinking of, what are the things I want to be keeping in mind? So if I reach an impasse, I'm going to take a step back and examine the assumptions I had and see if there are any other possibilities. Okay, so that would be like a little sequence you're like working out. You can use steps to be thinking in advance of, like, if this happens, then I'll do X or Y. And so just you're anticipating, like, how do you really want to shape how you're addressing uncertainty and doubts when you're in the cloud? But I don't think people need to have exact steps. So that would be my my short answer. It's hard to keep it general, but I think that always applies.
Well, Kevin, I think that's all the time we have for today. So do you have? Yeah, I wonder if you want to leave us with any final thoughts.
Yeah, just since what you need to get through the cloud and to thrive in the cloud is keeping the end in mind of what am I really seeking here, and keeping things deliberate and creative. Those are all things that go into constancy. So mastering the cloud allows you to be constant in any task. We talk about work as being order, intensity, constancy. But constancy is what happens, is like how you stay on track when things get hard. But that actually means how do you keep going for the right end, reorganizing your steps, renewing your strategy so that you can actually make the right progress. That's actually, in a sense, all the practice of constancy. The other thing I would just say is that in conversations, ordinarily we're always in the cloud when you're with friends and family. You're trying to get beyond what you think, like just all the things you know, and you're really trying to discover the people as if they're new. So you treat the people you're with, not as things known, but instead you're thinking, what's the right question for me to get to know them better? You have this positive goal of really getting to know them and to deepen your bond with them. And that's how you navigate the conversations that you have. So I know that people in the holiday season will be having more family conversations, hopefully, and all of those are a chance to you keep the end in mind, and then you keep new strategies. What's the right line of question? What's the right topics for us to really bond and get to know each other in a more deep way?
That's a great application of these ideas. It's great to see how this kind of new idea just fits perfectly into OptimalWork's approach.
Yeah,
and then applies to all these areas. So we will, that's it for this week, but thanks so much, Kevin, for joining us.
Thanks, Sharif. Yeah.
All right. Talk to you soon.